Sony has finally moved into launch mode for the upcoming PSVR 2 as it's just revealed the headset's pricing, release date, and a bunch of games. But with a price tag that's even higher than the PlayStation 5, is it already set up for failure? Well, in today's video, we're going to be discussing exactly that, plus a look into some newly announced VR titles. So without further ado, let's dive straight in. First off, the PSVR 2 is way too expensive. Sony's initial foray into virtual reality on PS4 was marginally successful. Well, as successful as a VR platform could have been anyway. After all, it's not exactly tech that has convinced many people, especially with the lack of that big killer app. So, the company's strategy to entice you into buying the OG PSVR was simple. It was accessible, connected to the PS4 you already owned, and of course, the cheap price point. In fact, at only $400, it was one of the more budget-friendly options out there. Fast forward to the modern day, and it looks like the company has sort of forgotten what made that product great in the first place. For starters, there aren't enough PS5s out in the wild right now to make this a no-brainer purchase. But to make matters worse, the quote-unquote added accessory costs more than the entire console itself. Yep, Sony's launching PSVR 2 at a whopping $550. Now, you might say that there are many other options on the market, like say the HTC Vive or the Valve Index, that cost more than this. And honestly, you'd be right, as the tech in this thing is pretty impressive. Then again, that's not the point of a PlayStation VR system. The thing is, those other systems are targeting a completely different audience that's already used to spending thousands of bucks building PCs. So convincing a console player is going to be extremely hard. Seriously, it kinda reminds us of the PS3 launch or the PS Vita, and we all know how those went. Up next, even the release window is a bit confusing. Alright, we get it. Timing a hardware release is hard, especially with all the supply chain issues around the world right now. Still, you've got to wonder, who launches a brand new product right after the holiday season? Apparently, Sony does. The company's planning to launch the PSVR 2 on the 22nd of February next year, and things aren't looking good. Why, you ask? Well, you see, hardware accessories that add to a console experience usually sell like hotcakes during the holiday season. After all, they're the perfect Christmas gifts. Like, it's just one of those things bought for family fun around the holidays, and once all the festivities are over, it's usually time for it to collect dust. By putting it in February at $550 though, not only has Sony removed the audience that would have bought into it just to give it a try, but it has also lost potential holiday sales. Obviously, it's very likely that the company did want to originally release it before December, but just couldn't make it. That being said, putting it in February isn't the smartest choice either, cause guess what? That's when people are still reeling from all the Christmas spending, plus of course the insane winter bills. No kidding, there's absolutely zero upsides to launching the PSVR 2 in February. Besides, if you want to get a charging dock and Horizon Call of the Mountain with it, that's an extra $100, which again, most people don't have lying around like that. Not to mention the lack of a killer app. Let's reel back the criticisms for a second and take the PSVR 2 for what it is. At its core, the headset is a really solid piece of tech that, when compared to other options with similar technical capabilities, looks fantastic. Sure, the price is high and the adoption rate isn't going to be great, but maybe Sony does have it all figured out. After all, perhaps all the PS5 sales during Christmas would result in new users wanting to get a VR headset on top. Who knows? Having said that, what we do know is that the PSVR 2 doesn't have a killer app right now. Now, if you didn't already know, every single platform has to launch with a must-play game in order to be successful. Of course, this isn't like a surefire rule or anything, but it's been proven true over and over again, especially within the gaming industry. Sadly, for the PlayStation VR 2, Horizon Call of the Mountain isn't exciting enough to be that. Don't get us wrong, we're sure it's going to be a brilliant game. It's just that for a virtual reality platform to succeed, a game doesn't just have to be a good VR title, but it's gotta be in the conversation for Game of the Year overall. Oh, and even that doesn't guarantee success, because, if you remember, Half-Life Alyx was a genuinely incredible experience. Still, it didn't quite transform Valve Index into a mainstream product. What's more, Sony could be repeating the cycle here. They say that lightning doesn't strike the same place twice. The video game industry, however, works on the opposite principle. There are cycles to everything here, whether it's a genre or, well, a console, and every decade or so, we see someone repeating the same mistakes again. Sony, for instance, saw a massive success with the PlayStation 2, which made it a bit too overconfident in its own ability. This led it down the path of making some really bizarre decisions. So it just ended up hoisting its own petard by screwing up the PS3 launch. Microsoft's had a similar experience with the Xbox One, which came off the back of a very successful Xbox 360. Now, we're not saying that things are as bad right now as they were back then, but the company is definitely making some odd choices with the PS5. The recent price hike, for example, is one of the only instances in history where a console's price has gone up with the passage of time. Oh, and we're not even going to touch the can of worms that's the PlayStation 5 supply. So maybe this is another one of those weird decisions creeping up on them. And honestly, if they don't start reeling these back in, it could spell disaster for them in the long run. Let's look at some newly revealed PSVR 2 launch games. First up, we've got some returning favorites. While everyone was sorta expecting the new PSVR to not be backward compatible, it was still kinda weird to hear it from Sony itself. After all, not having established IPs on a new platform can be its Achilles heel, especially against the likes of MetaQuest. Thankfully though, the company's been able to bolster its catalog with some old fan-favorite VR games. Cities VR, for example, is an amazing urban management game that works even better in virtual reality, and thanks to the added horsepower of the PS5, you can now watch your terrible traffic jams in even higher fidelity. If that's not your jam though, then you could also try to escape from your creepy neighbor's house in Hello Neighbor Search and Rescue. The game's been out for a while now and has a solid player base, so you won't have any trouble finding friends for co-op runs either. Or just in case you want some of that sweet Super Hot or Beat Saber action, then the launch lineup also includes Pistol Whip, which combines both of those games for an insane action rhythm experience. Next up, some horror games to get the goosebumps going. Now, if you're a fan of the horror genre, you know that there's nothing better than a VR experience that scares the soul out of you. Like, there's just something magical about it. So, of course, Sony announced a bunch of horror experiences like the Dark Pictures Switchback VR. Designed by Supermassive Games, the studio behind Quarry and Until Dawn, this is a fast-paced roller coaster action horror shooter. Yeah, those are a lot of words, but hey, there's a lot of game here too. If you want to go the fantasy route though, then the Light Brigade's got you covered. In this, you gotta navigate through forests, mountains, and obviously forgotten graveyards, while using magic and bullets to defeat deadly supernatural forces. But if these two are a bit too spooky for your tastes, then you've got After the Fall, which has a more action-oriented post-apocalyptic setting. Finally, let's wrap things up with some cute VR experiences. Okay, we get it. Not everyone likes scary horror games or shooters like Crossfire, and if you're one of those people, then you might want to look at Cosmonious High, which is a single-player alien action-adventure game by the creators of Job Simulator. You're this cute little guy who crashes inside a school, and you've got to use your powers to adapt to the environment. Then again, you could always scale things up and turn into a giant good-hearted octopus, solving a bunch of puzzles in Tentacular. That said, teaming up with your friends in Zenith the Last City and exploring a colorful open world doesn't sound like a bad evening either. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think that the PSVR 2 will be a success for Sony, especially with its launch lineup? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.